the weather forecast with C3 Production.
Good evening, good people, and welcome once again to another edition of the weather forecast. I hope you are enjoying your Sunday. Between tonight and tomorrow morning, we may have a relatively calm weather with light to moderate showers in some parts of the littoral and the southwest regions. As low as 17 to 18 degrees is expected in the northwest and west regions, the Adamawa region a minimum of 20 degrees, and the center and east regions will expect to get down to a minimum of 21 degrees. D'Italy, we move on to the littoral, where heavy rainfall may dominate the region with as low as 18 degrees in Kongsamba, progressing to a similar situation in the entire littoral by morning. We move next to the north, where this evening there may be light showers in the town of Poli, and a similar situation by morning with a clouded sky in all the major towns of the north. Lastly, we go over to the southwest, where this evening heavy rainfall may dominate the region with as low as 16 degrees in Menji, and a similar situation is expected to dominate the entire southwest region by morning. To protect yourself and others against the coronavirus, wash your hands regularly with soap and clean water, sneeze with a flexed elbow, and in case of symptoms, call 1510. See you next time.
The population flees hospitals due to the coronavirus scare, unable to detect how safe hospitals are and compounded with the number of infections of some medical personnel recorded. Hospitals are deserted, beating the fear and staying reassured. Come up in this newscast. The German-Oduala Treaty of 1884 is revisited 136 years after, with the main actors immortalized and the history of the German colonial rule told in a series titled Our Wishes. The inhabitants of the Lokbesu neighborhood in Douala live in uncertainty, threatened by landslides after the collapse of two buildings. Residents might be forced to relocate with the recent torrential rainfalls. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Those were the headlines of the 7:30 news.
Each of us must comply with the measures that have been taken.
You're welcome back. The spread of the coronavirus in Cameroon is greatly impacting the number of persons seeking health services in hospitals, be it for consultations or immunizations. Many are those who opt for alternate sources of treatment away from health centers for fear of contaminations of COVID-19. This is a worrying concern for medical personnel who enjoin the population that they can be safe in medical institutions. Emmanuela Vemnu reports on what obtains in Yaoundé.
Deserted waiting halls, empty hospitalization beds, and a less occupied staff. This is what the COVID-19 scare has done to hospitals in Yaoundé.
The wards are almost empty. Those who are there, they are those who are really in critical conditions. Formerly, we used to have minimum 3 to 5 cases hospitalized every day. Monthly, 150 something, 60 something cases. But now the number has dropped. There are days we don't even have any hospitalized case.
The situation is so alarming that instead of rushing for health care after taking ill, patients camper in homes for fear of being contaminated or stigmatized if tested COVID-19 positive.
They come only when the cases are really critical that they can't manage. We have so many blood transfusion cases. Yes, we have some few deaths.
Medical personnel are worried over this state of affairs.
People need to be sensitized. If not, we run the risk of an epidemic of illness we have had control over. Take, for example, the vaccination calendar is not respected. We received children here at 3 months without having received even their first vaccine.
They now play the role of counselors.
I have neighbors who come to ask me if vaccinating a child now is safe. I tell them to go ahead. If not, the child can contract an illness which would have been avoided.
Like Natasha, The few who come around remember the heydays.
I came to consult a pediatrician and I was received immediately. Before, there were so many people and it took time to be received.
Visiting the hospital or not, the bond between hospital facilities and their patients remains unbreakable.
The fear to seek medical care in hospitals has led to a series of complications which sometimes lead to death. Some health professionals attest that most patients who finally visit hospitals for consultations and treatment find themselves wanting due to advanced stages of infections. The direct consequence is that not only is the number of patients received dropped from 150 to less than 70 a day, handling acute cases could be quite challenging. Cynthia Saptala tells us more.
It's a general concern of medics these days are the empty chairs in the waiting room, the drop in activity in some health departments, and the empty beds in hospital wards. Where are the patients?
Before the coronavirus, the hospital can receive between 100 and 150 patients for ophthalmology only. In the general side, around 100 patients averagely. Today, we hardly reach 100. There are some days we have 50 patients only, but averagely we are around 75, 80 patients per day.
As COVID-19 fears keep people with other health issues away, the financial loss is just one of the consequences to the drop in consultations.
At the hospital level, we can say there can be financial drop. Of course, when they come, the income will drop. And also the activity will drop.
In order to limit possible transmission within the hospital premises and encourage medical attention where need be, health administrators say rigorous preventive measures are applied here.
A lot of changes have been made to adapt the coronavirus. On the machines, we put shields to protect, and all this happen under the condition where the patient and the consultant have their mask. Cases that can be handled from home, we make our best to keep them really home.
With the medical staff being the most exposed to the virus, it is in their interest to make the environment safer for themselves and their patients.
The challenge for health personnel is now to convince the population that although the coronavirus is real and can be contracted just anywhere, adequate measures have been taken in hospitals to keep all patients without the virus safe. The creation of isolation centers for COVID-19 cases and a track, test and treat approach to detect carriers are also consoling. Beatrice Goom reports on the cycles and how it can be overcome.
The fear of contamination, the scare of many. COVID-19 has been equated to death, and the consequences are evident. One of such being hospital phobia.
When you think that coronavirus means die, you can easily understand why people are afraid to go to a hospital, because they are afraid of infection. They don't want to die.
To beat the phobia and encourage patients to consult health facilities again, there must be a change in the perception of the disease. Proper communication on risk management is imperative.
It's important to limit information coming from abroad, United States, Belgium, etc., because it's their reality. We have to keep on our reality, and our reality is that we have many persons who are asymptomatic. 95% of those who are infected will recover.
Sensitization to beat fear, panic, and psychosis around the disease must also begin now.
It's a disease like another one. We live with malaria, we live with high BP, we live with some flu, and now we have to live with coronavirus. They have to go to the hospital because they are afraid of something who is less dangerous than the diseases that we have to deal with every day.
However, medics say the creation of dedicated and specialized centers to handle COVID cases, just like the creation of isolation units in hospitals, have to an extent help in maintaining normal healthcare operations.
And now on to some philanthropic gestures. The rural women of Obala in the Center region have additional anti-COVID-19 material to stall the spread of the virus in their villages. The Association of Women specialized in the retail of fresh food items, ASB, toured 4 villages in the locality with food items and protective gears for the population. Lekiate Gertrude Asongazi reports on the action promoted by the association's president, Marie Mbala Biloa.
The gifts handed to the people of Nkolngem, Kolbinen, Kol-Ewondo and G villages comprise of 2,000 face masks, 31 buckets, 12 cartons of soap and bags of rice. The distribution exercise, according to ASB President Mbala Biloa, will equally be organized in other branches of the association so as to accompany government in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The presiding divisional officer for Obala, Namve Claude Bernard, seized the occasion to educate the population on the need to respect the barrier measures by the government.
At my level, I do what I can do and what I must do. I use the media like radio, television, church, another way of communication.
The donation ceremony in Kolngem, Obala by ASB was graced by animation from some local artists and sketches on the manifestation of the coronavirus.
The natives and friends of the town of Kongsamba, grouped under the Anan Association, have extended a hand of fellowship to inmates of the Kongsamba Central Prison in the Littoral region, cognizant of the impracticality to respect physical distancing in penitentiary units. The group, led by Martin Edimo, went visiting with hygiene and protective kits for the detainees. Laris Nane Pote has more.
A majority out of the over 400 prisoners at the Kongsamba Central Prison are young and still have hope for the future, despite 7 jail terms, while others are parents hoping to reunite with their families one day. Like every other human being, they have the right to be treated equally and protected by the society. With the invasion of the coronavirus pandemic in the country, the Association of Natives and Friends of the town of Kongsamba visited the prisoners with gifts comprising bags of rice, gallons of oil, cartons of soap and other sanitary materials to extend their love and friendship towards these persons temporarily or permanently stripped of their freedom for crimes committed.
We came with these gifts to tell them they are not abandoned. We are here to give them life and hope for the future, for they are people like us who can still contribute to the development of the town of Kongsamba.
A gesture the prison superintendent says it comes to reinforce government assistance to fight COVID-19. The association also has as objective to bring development to the town of Kongsamba for it to once again regain its lost glory of the third city in the history of Cameroon.
The Patriotic Youth for Paul Biya Japabi, on its part, has taken the campaign to oust the coronavirus from Cameroon's cities and the 2 main markets of Bolova. The members of the association sensitized on the need to respect barrier measures prescribed by government and also used the opportunity to distribute preventive gadgets to traders and to the population. Clarence Azay tells us more from the south.
Despite the downpours which watered the town of Bolova throughout this Saturday, July 11, members of the collective des Jeunes Patriotes avec Paul Biya fought hard like real soldiers to sensitize the population, most especially traders of the Bolova Central and food markets, to more than ever before respect the preventive measures outlined.
We have come here to meet the traders and to meet the cycles driver, so to tell them that they should respect all the measures that have been taken by the head of state.
At each stop, the Patriotic Youth, led by the national coordinator, Steve Michel Aka, handed out face masks, buckets and cubes of soap to the traders to better protect themselves against the deadly virus.
It's to encourage the population to continue to respect the measures provided by the government.
The collective des Jeunes Patriotes avec Paul Biya is an association which was created in 2017 and seeks to rally more youth behind the head of state for the construction of a united and prosperous Cameroon.
As announced in one of our top stories, today marks 136 years since the Germano-Douala Treaty was signed between the representatives of the Johnson and Thommelin firm and some of the Douala kings, notably Ndumbelo Bebel and King Aqua. The decision, which was not a unanimous choice and which saw some of the local rulers cede their lands to the Germans, was protested by others in the likes of Kumambape. Joyce Tata tonight takes us down memory lane and reports on the significance of the German rule.
This same day, 136 years ago, the Germano-Douala Treaty was signed as the Germans scrambled for territories. It targeted the coastal region of Cameroon mainly for its strategic position.
If I ask you, since when the country Cameroon exists, you have to answer from the signature of the treaty on the 12th July 1884. Cameroon appears as a new country in the international relations area.
The signing took place along the banks of River Wuri in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, where statues of some of the main actors have been mounted.
We have to know that 30 years after begins with a fight, the first fight against colonialism, led by Rudolf Douala Mangabel, ended by the hanging of Rudolf Douala Mangabel, but fortunately or unfortunately, ending also by the First World War.
The Germano-Douala Treaty, one of the most popular colonial accords, was short-lived as France and Britain joined forces to take over from the Germans in 1919.
In 30 episodes, a series titled Our Wishes, produced and directed by Cameroon's Jean-Pierre Bekolo, tells the history of Cameroon and the Germano-Douala Treaty of 1884. With actors like Gérard Essomba and Valérie Ndongo, the film director unveils the country's past through emotions, intrigues and suspense. Emmanuel Avemieux caught up with the director Jean-Pierre Bekolo, who says the intention is to enable Cameroonians connect with their history.
Nous sommes les rois et les chefs de Cameroon Rivers.
Our Wishes, through its diverse characters, recreates life around the Germano-Douala Treaty of July 12, 1884. Through a show of emotions, suspense and intrigues, the historic past of Cameroon is served on TV screens for our citizens to relate to.
Telling history of Cameroon to young people is a duty for us. I was lucky that I had a script written by Madame Oyono, which is this German woman who married a Cameroonian, has been here for 50 years. We are actually at a point, I think, in history where we cannot afford to ignore where we come from.
In 30 episodes, actors in the likes of Gérard Essomba, Emile Abosolo, Valérie Ndongo and more retrace this defining moment of Cameroon with an objective.
We are coming from, as Cameroon with K, from this relation we had with Germans. And how the whole future of the country was designed from that first encounter. And that first encounter for me has a lot of what we actually live today, but we don't know how to go back and dig in history why we are facing this situation or that situation, or even how we understand who we are.
The producer believes the relationship between Cameroonians does not solely rely on African cultures, but equally those of their colonial masters.
In history, you can only keep facts. You keep facts, you keep dates. You don't really get into all the emotion part of the story life, actually. So I think you have to kind of bring it to life. These are the stuff that made us kind of put this whole thing in the format of a TV series.
To him, it is only when a people master their history can they know where they are going to, and Our Wishes is helping in this direction.
In other news, the inhabitants of the Lokbesu neighborhood of Douala are living in uncertainty as a possible landslide is lurking in the horizon. For the past 2 years, the uncompleted works of a construction company has weakened the road network and led to floods. So far, 2 buildings have collapsed, many more are threatened, and the inhabitants may be forced to relocate, as we hear in this report by Madon Kwele.
They have been sleeping with an eye closed and another open since the start of the rainy season, for fear of one day being covered by land. A situation these residents of the Logbeso Anten neighborhood, precisely the Vallée de Noble area in the Douala 5 subdivision, have been witnessing for close to 2 years now.
It all started in 2018 when a private construction company had to rehabilitate the roads from Bange to Sodikombo. After scraping, they felled a palm tree and later abandoned it. During heavy downpours, the gutter was blocked by the tree, causing much floods. That's what has been causing landslides.
Since then, 2 buildings are said to have collapsed recently, and this one at the verge of its logical end. Roads barely accessible for pedestrians and motorbike riders. Others whose houses have been barred only have their eyes to watch, given they have nowhere else to go.
A 3-floor-story building collapsed just recently. This is the 3rd building already.
No solution seems close in the horizon. As such, inhabitants of Logbeso Anten have not folded their arms. These inhabitants are pleading with government to remedy this situation while hoping to be spared from the worst.
The wearing of face masks in public places will be mandatory until further notice.
It's exactly 7:50, and the wearing of face masks and the respect of physical distancing in penitentiary units can be quite an arduous task, given that most of these centers are already suffering from overcrowding. Inmates are not only in a minimal possession of hygiene and protective gears, they are also bound to live and to survive in confined areas. Tonight, with Gilbert Ongene at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center, we talk about the management of COVID-19 cases in the penitentiary. Hello, Gilbert.
Hello, Esther Kima. Welcome to the Public Health Emergency Operations Center. Today at the press briefing with Dr. Fane Mahamad on behalf of the Minister of Public Health, she laid emphasis on the fact that government response strategy against the COVID-19 is, of course, centered around vulnerable people in society, most especially the sick, the elderly, and the children, of course, pregnant women, and most especially those who are in penitentiary institutions, that is prisons. And of course, emphasis was laid on the fact that those who are in prison centers or detention centers, that's detainees or inmates, are being taken care of, especially on the 17th of March this year, when the Prime Minister, head of government, took a decision on instructions from the head of state talking about the 17 barrier measures to fight against the COVID-19. One day after, that's the 18th of March 2020, the Minister of State, Minister of Justice and Keeper of the Seals, Laurent Esso, took a circular address to all officials of penitentiary institutions across the national territory, in which strict and special measures were taken in order to stop the spread of the coronavirus in penitentiary institutions across the national territory. That is how, in this circular, you notice that visits to prisoners have been restricted, and of course, communication with their visitors is also controlled by medical officials. And there is a strict and harmonious collaboration between the regional committees in penitentiary administrations and health officials at the level of regions in order to harmonize all these measures so that prisoners do not contract the coronavirus. And as you well know, if that should happen, the spread of the virus will be dramatic in prisons, which we all know is most of them are congested somehow. So the help of government and partners, the stemming of the coronavirus is going on in prisons. The central prison here in Yaoundé has a screening center. Most prisons too across the national territory have screening centers for the COVID-19. And of course, officials of penitentiary administration who, of course, handed down information to health officials of the Public Health Emergency Operations Center said everything is under control in the prisons across the national territory. That is the situation out there at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center. Over to you, Esther.
This is very much, Gilbert, for some of the actions taken by government and also other partners to ensure that inmates are safe in spite of the spread of the coronavirus in penitentiary units. In other news, women and youth associations in the Adamawa region now have an important stock of farming equipment and improved seedlings to increase their yields. The assistance comes from the Ministry of the Economy, Planning and Regional Development and is expected to ward off the effects of the coronavirus pandemic in the sector of agriculture. Rekiato Musa Jingi tells us more from Gaundere.
Faced with insecurity and climate change, farmers in the Adamawa have deserted their fields. Many more missed out on key farming activities such as timely seeding during the last planting season. This has left market shelves bare and many families without sufficient stocks harvested crops. The over 12 women and youth associations received, amongst other equipment, farming tools, motor pumps, seedlings, and anti-COVID-19 kits as an economic booster to improve high-yield produce for development of their municipality. The support from Minipat on the World Population Day is the beginning of a solution to these problems.
I'm very happy for this equipment. I will be able to work stress-free. This machine will help me to produce more and take to the market without any problem.
While receiving the gifts from the hands of the Adamawa governor, the beneficiaries took firm engagement to judiciously use the equipment for the development of their areas.
I do hope that those groups will use them adequately because those materials are meant to be used for agricultural activities. We are very happy because the fight against hunger, poverty is on good foot in our region.
Meantime, the women and youth were equally reminded to stay safe during this COVID-19 period as they improve on their productivity.
And over in the North region, Dr. Abdurrahman Maikanti is the new mayor of the Garua 3 Council, elected during a council session held to fill the vacancy left by the demise of Amidu Laimani. Exhorted by the senior divisional officer for Benue, Umaru Haman Wabi, to work for the social economic progress of the city, the council head will also have to address urban disorder and youth employment. Wilson Mengole has more.
The mayor of the Garua 3 Council, Dr. Abdurrahman Maikanti, and his first deputy were unanimously voted by the 28 councillors without any challenger to replace the deceased mayor, Hamadu Laimani, and the first assistant, Naivuna Hakasu, who has taken up a similar position at the Garua City Council. Soon after the election, the 51-year-old Dr. Abdurrahman and his team said they will begin handling projects that are of top priority.
I will try to build a task force which can allow us to go ahead. And the former mayor had did a lot and many things. The population, the expectation of the population are very high, and then we will try to satisfy them.
While supervising the exercise, the senior divisional officer of the Benue, Umaru Haman Wabi, in the presence of the youngest and oldest councillors, urged the newly elected to work in close ranks with the people.
Population are waiting. This executive do the work.
The population of Garua 3 subdivision are hopeful that their expectations will be met.
The University of Douala is now linked to the African Marine Mammal Conservation Organization, AMCO. This follows a partnership signed between the Institute of Fishery Sciences of the University of Douala in Yabassi and the non-governmental organization specialized in the protection of maritime and estuarine mammals. The university rector, Professor Magloire Ondoa, was at the institution earlier this week for an evaluation of the studies. Scholar Maloke has the details.
The first part of this maiden walking visit by the rector of the University of Douala to the campus of the Institute of Fishery Sciences of Yabassi was the signing of an agreement which now defines the terms of collaboration between the institution and the AMCO NGO.
What AMCO is bringing in is building the capacity of the student that we receive at AMCO as intern, and because we have the technology, we have a lot of experience, and we're preparing those students to insert themselves in the world of research and also work.
Deserves a more conducive working environment, reason why in the second part of his visit, he went to the Mbanyap 2 campus, where he expressed disappointment over the mediocre work being carried out by the company in charge of the construction. This campus is expected to host the Institute of Fishery Sciences in Yabassi.
Still in education, a doctoral thesis which dissects Kwame Nkrumah's perception of the emergence of Africa has been defended in the University of Yaoundé 1. The work, titled La pensée de Kwame Nkrumah et l'émergence de l'Afrique, is authored by Naina Lisa Ebenye Bunya Epe, proclaimed Doctor of Philosophy with a high grade. Yolti Ikale Lisongel witnessed the defense and our reports.
An oral examination to ascertain the candidate's mastery of a written doctoral thesis on La pensée de Kwame Nkrumah et l'émergence de l'Afrique, defended in 10 chapters. Naina Lisa is gunning for a PhD in philosophy. And she succeeds, scoring 16 on 20.
Le jury estime que vous êtes digne du grade de docteur PhD en philosophie. Il vous donne la note 16 sur 20 avec l'action très honorable.
The candidate has reminded us to think of Nkrumah and his main book, Conscientism. It's a book written on the topic of decolonization and liberation of Africa. We have to work a lot to liberate ourselves.
Adorned in the attire that suits her title, the newly pronounced Doctor of Philosophy further explains her idea.
Africans have to be conscious of their worth in the world in order to develop. Africa must unite. It's a book by Kwame Nkrumah. He calls on the union of strengths.
Statements to revive Africans, said to be an integral part of the continent's emergence.
Exploiting the winds in the far north region to generate energy is possible, and government ought to invest in the initiative to increase the quality and quantity of power supply. This is the essence of a doctoral thesis defended by Dr. Nicodem Niso in Marwa, who proposed the construction of wind towers and accompanying structures. Henry Tato Ekambi tells us more from the far north.
There is an abundance of wind in all seasons in the far north, especially during Harmattan. This overflow of wind can now be used to generate electricity in a region where experts believe more than half of the population are living in darkness. That is what Dr. Nicodem Niso proposed to university dons and the populace as he defended his PhD thesis on how to generate electricity from the wind. Even though solar energy is gaining grounds in our region, we should not neglect wind energy because we have an abundance of wind in all seasons. We can reduce our enormous electricity deficit in our region by installing a wind turbine in homes and structures. The president of the jury believes the research work can be of great help to the population of the far north if concretized.
This thesis has a lot of importance. The state really wants us to produce at least 25% of energy, renewable energy in our local houses.
Dr. Nicodem Niso, who was accorded a very honorable distinction by the jury, is now hoping that his research work will be worked on by the state for the benefit of the northern part of the country.
And now on today's Thanksgiving service, the President of the Senate, Marsenyan Jifenji, is expressing gratitude to God Almighty for the grace, mercy and favor upon his life and those of his family. He was glorifying his Creator today during a Thanksgiving service at the Famgo Temple of the Evangelical Church in Cameroon, Bangante Parish. The officiating ministers called on the faithful to be fertile ground for the Word of God. Chanceline Nanze has the details.
Surrounded by family members, parliamentarians and members of government,
The President of the Senate sang praises to God Almighty for restoring his health.
He has been here for quite some time, and now he's happy to be back. We also have death in the family, so it was a moment to stay all together, to regroup, to get strength, and get back to usual business.
According to the officiating minister, Pastor Luther Nanchwang, every man has to make his life fertile ground for the growth of God's word, something he says is evident in the life of Senate President Marcel Nyat Njifenje. It was also an occasion to pray God for more wisdom to the head of state, Paul Biya, as he works for the restoration of peace in the restive northwest and southwest regions and fights against the spread of the coronavirus in Cameroon. And talking about the coronavirus pandemic, barrier measures were fully respected during the Thanksgiving service.
And now on today's obituary, friends and family members of the late Colonel and medical doctor of the President of the Republic, Marius Etundi, as well as some senior top government officials have paid their last respects to the highly esteemed elite of Okola in a requiem mass that took place today at Konambeng village. The requiem mass was officiated by the Archbishop Emeritus of the Beto Diocese, Roger Piren, assisted by a college of priests. The President of the Republic was represented at the ceremony by the senior divisional officer for Leke, Patrick Simu Kamso. Amin King Edward tells us more.
It was a heavily attended and very elaborate official funeral that unfolded in 3 phases in honor of an illustrious son of Konambeng in Okola subdivision, Colonel of the Cameroon Armed Forces and the medical doctor of the President of the Republic, Marius Etundi, who died last May 22nd after a brief illness at the age of 68. By virtue of his status and selfless service to his community, he was accorded a special traditional funeral rite by the elite and elders of Konambeng in communion with the ancestors of the land before the start of a requiem mass officiated by the Archbishop Emeritus of the Beto Diocese, His Grace Roger Piren, in the presence of the College of Priests, some top government officials, family members, colleagues, friends and well-wishers like Minister Benoit Ndong Somet.
Colonel Etundi Marius was a very great gentleman. You have seen all this mobilization around him. It is because of his virtues. He was a noble man. He was very discreet. You know, when you live like that, you have the admiration of all the population.
The chief celebrant joined the College of Priests to pray for the peaceful repose of the soul of the deceased, stating that as a faithful Christian, Marius Etundi has just begun a new and everlasting life in God's kingdom, while making supplications to the Almighty God to grant his family members the fortitude they need to bear the loss of a loved one. Eulogies full of emotions that followed from friends, elite and family members described the fallen hero as a faithful servant to the nation. Humble, generous and discreet, Ludovic Etundi is the son of the deceased.
My father was a great person. I know him, I stayed with him for several times, for a long time, and he leaves us with good values of hard working, staying together, because being together is the power.
Posthumously, the former close collaborator of the head of state was decorated with the Cross of Military Valor by the senior divisional officer for Leke, Patrick Simu Kamso, personal representative of the President of the Republic at the ceremony. An honorific distinction from President Paul Biya to a loyal servant handed over to the widow, Madame Etundi.
And may the soul of the late Colonel, buried yesterday, rest in peace. CRTV West in Bafoussam is also mourning one of its technicians, Desiree Chonku, who died at the age of 39. The agent of the Technical Service of the Transmission Center in Chang has been buried in his native Makenene in the Center region. CRTV's Director General, Shandongo, was represented at the funeral by the station manager of the West region, Rene Njoyamot. Go Henry Tiesambe reports on the burial.
Desiree Chunke died recently at the age of 39 after a protracted illness. During the burial in Makenene Center region, the spouse, Sore Chunke, and family members described him as a loving and a caring husband and a God-fearing person. According to the personal representative of the Director General of the CRTV, Shandungu, station manager of CRTV West, Renin Joyamut, the late technician who has spent 7 years at the corporation was a dedicated and assiduous worker. Desiree Chunke served at the regional station and the transmission centers in Chang, Bangu, and Bafusam. During the burial service, the officiating pastor prayed God for his soul and to guide the family. The late technician, Desiree Chunke, leaves behind a wife, 2 kids, and a mother.
In foreign news, the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam by Ethiopia over the Nile is expected to be completed this month to become the first hydroelectric power plants in Africa. The dam's construction, to cost some $4 billion, has been a source of diplomatic discord between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt. All parties say for all the 3 countries to benefit, there must be a negotiated solution. Charles Ebouné spoke to the Sudanese chargé d'affaires here in Yaoundé. This is what he had to say in this interview.
Sudan is a Nile and Nile is Sudan. Ethiopia is Nile River and Nile is Ethiopia. We all, 3 countries, we share common interests of all the citizens of the 3 countries. That's why Sudan, from the beginning, 2011, up to date, holding negotiations consistently, and that based on good faith, common interest. Sudan is standing the same distance closely. Sudan, Ethiopia, the same distance, Sudan, Egypt.
And that interview with Abdallah Silla is ongoing now at CRTV News. More news comes up at 8:30 p.m. with Atabadine Omar. I'll be back next weekend, God willing. Stay tuned to our programs on the CRTV. And stay safe, stay protected if you must go out. Good night.
In this connection, we should avoid stigmatizing